Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, a late transfer portal edition for Matt Rhule, the Nebraska Cornhuskers, as former LSU tight end Mac Markway joining this Nebraska program heading into 2024 is actually going to practice with Nebraska this afternoon. And this one, I know it makes a lot of people scratch their head. This is as late as a transfer portal edition as I've seen. That being said, I also think it makes a lot of sense where you look at this Nebraska offense. It's going to be a lot of 12 personnel. And we've said this all offseason. You make no mistake about it. Nebraska is going to want to run the football, use their tight ends in the run blocking department. You look at Mac Markway. This kid, as a true freshman, played over 160 snaps in the SEC. Why did he play that much for LSU last year? Because he's extremely physically imposing in the run game. I go back to Mac Markway as a recruit coming out of high school and said, this kid's going to be a solid tight end, especially as an inline blocker. Probably could have been an even better defensive lineman. This kid is extremely put together. He's physically imposing and is going to serve a role for this Nebraska offense. And again, from a personnel standpoint, I think it makes a ton of sense where Thomas Fidone is going to be that pass catching threat as a tight end, but not necessarily the best run blocker. You get a guy like Mac Markway, he's going to be that physically imposing tight end within this Nebraska offense. And he's got 3 years of eligibility. He also has a redshirt year to use. In terms of building this Nebraska roster, I think it makes a ton of sense. Want to get into Mac Markway, talk a little bit about what he brings to this Nebraska offense. Now, before we get into it, as always, to the Nebraska fans, appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. The amount of support you all have shown really all off season, it means the world. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And I think much more importantly, would love to hear how you guys are feeling in the comments section about this edition. And without further ado, let's get into it now. A background on Mac Markway, 2023 kid who was a 4-star tight end, a top 20 tight end in the country coming out of high school. His father played tight end for the Iowa Hawkeyes. His older brother played tight end for South Carolina. This is a tight end family. And you look at Mac Markway and say the specific skill set that he brings. I don't think Mac Markway is ever going to be this dynamic tight end that goes for over 700 yards. I think for Nebraska, you're completely comfortable with that because you have a guy like Thomas Fidone this year. And once Carter Nelson puts on a little bit more weight, he's going to be that guy over the next couple of years. I mean, you add Mac Markway as that run blocking tight end that can be a massive asset in the run blocking department for Nebraska. You look at Michigan last year. They kind of had a guy like this in Max Bredesen, who's now a team captain for Michigan. These kind of guys, although do not show up in the box score of the stat sheet, they mean a lot, especially to an offense like Nebraska, where you go into 2024. What's the one thing we've talked about extensively? Getting Dylan Rhule comfortable in this offense, give him a run game. I think Mac Markway is going to be able to do that. You go back to the high school film, this kid was kind of an animal on the defensive line. I mean, you talk about physically imposing tight ends. You don't play 160 snaps if you're not physically ready to play in the SEC. Mac Markway did that. And then you go back to this was kind of a weird story when he transferred from LSU. It was in the middle of fall camp. The LSU fans weren't happy about this. This wasn't one of those transfer portal entries that, LSU looked at and said, all right, good. He wasn't going to play a role. He was expected to play a lot in 12 personnel sets for LSU in 2024. I think that tells you a little bit about the caliber of player Nebraska's getting. Now, I think he transferred out because, and for the LSU fans who might be checking this out, Trey'Dez Green, that true freshman, it sounds like might have played a role in Mac Markway transferring out. I think that this makes a lot of sense for Nebraska, specifically what they want to do. You pull up the depth chart and say, I could see Mac Markway settling in and playing a lot of football for Nebraska, especially in that 12 personnel set where Thomas Fidone, he's going to be your guy that you're kind of using to control the middle of the field. But you get down into the red zone. Mac Markway caught a touchdown pass last year. He's a red zone presence with that big body, the ability to go make plays. But I think most importantly, you talk about getting that run game going. Mac Markway is going to play a role. We'll cut it there. Wanted to hop on. And again, I think this is going to make a lot of Nebraska fans maybe scratch their head. I think this makes sense. And he's a guy that he doesn't need to know every single play in the playbook coming into Nebraska. There's going to be a lot of run concepts that I think Mac Markway is going to get used with. I think he's able to play this weekend. I don't know if we'll see him play. I don't know if he'll travel with the team, but I think you make no mistake about it, especially a week 2 game against Colorado, where the antithesis, or now that's not the right word, but where that big key of the game to beating Colorado at home is going to be running the football. I wouldn't be surprised if you see a guy like Mac Markway play a role in that Colorado game. I think this makes sense. It's a kind of tight end that Matt Rhule wants within this program. I think more importantly, you have him for 3 more years plus a redshirt year. Really interesting move. Nebraska's made a couple of them, right? Adding Sayre Wright I think it's a fun one. We'll see how much of a role he plays within this Nebraska offense, but make no mistake about it, this kid is going to be physically imposing in the run blocking department. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later.